Hey, how's it going everyone? Alex with the World of Asian channel, and behind me is a 10-gallon shallow that I've been sitting on for far too long. And we are going to be making a grassy swamp type aquarium for some rice fish. We have some sweet flag, as you can see in the background. And it's just going to be a nice little shallow, grassy aquarium. Super serene and just super chill. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, so let's get into it. As you can see, I've already been playing around with some ideas here. We have different types of lights. We have the spotlight here that I believe I'm going to mount on the wall around here, so that way it'll shine right on the sweet flag here. Me and Katie got this table at a thrift store for like 30 bucks. It's like absolutely perfect for this. Look, it's got like drawers and everything. How cool is that? Alright, before I drill into some drywall, I'm just going to go ahead and move this aquarium entirely. Alright, should be easy enough. There we go, we have a wall-mounted light. Honestly, I think this looks pretty sweet. As far as the final build goes, I reckon that maybe we'll have like a nice spotlight here for detail to kind of shine that way so we can actually see what's going on in the foreground. But yeah, we have the overall light for the majority of the ambient lighting, and I think it looks pretty sweet. Maybe we'll hide the cable at some point, maybe put it behind the drywall, not really sure, but yeah, really like where this is going. This wall-mounted spotlight I got for like $20 in the garden section at Lowe's. It's meant to shine up at your house at night. You know, it's like one of those garden lights that like lights up your pathway. But yeah, that's what it's for, and it was super cheap. This sweet flag here is actually going to be planted into the sand, and it's going to be sticking out of the water. A lot of riparian plants, I have them on like the wood above the water, but this will actually be planted straight into the water. So yeah, let's go ahead and get everything out of here and get the substrate in here. So as far as the sand that we are using, this is what I call the blend, which is basically just a bunch of recycled sand from previous projects. I'm not really putting a bunch of emphasis on the sand color in this aquarium, mainly because I don't think you'll be able to see it that well. I envision that a lot of the attention is going to be drawn towards the grass feature in the center, and then there's going to be a bunch of floating plants, and then I think there's going to be a lot going on in this aquarium, and I'm not too concerned, and I think this looks pretty good in my opinion. So yeah, it's just a neutral brown color, and should do us pretty well in here. I'm going to go ahead and flatten this out real quick. This might actually not be enough, but let me just level it out just to see what we're working with. And I'm going to level it out and actually create an opening in the center for when we plant the sweet flag. So let me just do this real quick. Well, long story short, this was simply not enough sand, but that is not an issue. We have a bin full of coarse sand that matches the color rather nicely, and I'm going to mix this in there. I think it's going to look really good. So this bin has been sitting in the dark in my supply closet for a few months, and what's crazy is that there is a crypt Wentii plant growing in there. A lot of people ask me what the easiest plant is to take care of. Honestly, Crypt Wentii brown is a pretty good contender. This was in a closet with the lights off for maybe like 3 months, and there's Crypt emerging, which is insane. So I'm not doing anything crazy here. We're just going to go ahead and put in some of this coarse sand and then just kind of give it a little mix and see where we go from there. Well, there we have it. Just a mixture of every substrate that I had in my supply closet. Mixture of different sands, some loose bits of aqua soil in there, presumably, and some coarse sand. And it's just a super neutral and natural look. You really can't go wrong. So like I mentioned earlier, this sweet flag will actually be planted into the substrate. It won't be like, you know, attached to the wood. It'll actually be in the substrate, sticking out of the water. So as you can see, for our hardscape, we have two really nice pieces of driftwood here. I think it's Malaysian or Mopani, I'm actually not really sure. But I have them wedged in here now. So they're actually staying in pretty nicely. I'm going to wedge this piece kind of like under. That way it maintains its structural integrity. And then I'm going to kind of just put some river rocks all around. And yeah, I'm just going to kind of wedge the river rocks into the corners of where the driftwood allows, and then I'm going to use those as sort of ways to kind of conjoin the entire scape together and interlock everything. I'm just going to go around and place some tissues into where the rocks kind of meet the wood, and then just kind of soak them in glue. This step doesn't necessarily need to be done perfectly. You just kind of need to make sure that it's stabilized, and all the mistakes and all the mishaps that you did with the glue, you can cover those up with the Nubius and Buse later on, so more on that later. But yeah, it's pretty stable, I would say. Alright, as far as planting goes, I'm just going to go ahead and wedge them into the sand. Yeah, nothing crazy here, just kind of sticking them in there and burying them to the best of my ability. So a big deciding factor for using coarse gravel in here, or coarse sand if you will, is it helps keep the plant propped up. This is a pretty robust plant. It kind of does have a lot of weight to it towards the bottom. So using a gravel really helps kind of keep it upright. So it's been about 21 days since we had planted the sweet flag, and I have added, or I have done the initial fill up on the water, and things are just kind of establishing. I'm just letting things do what they do. As you can see, we have a lot of duckweed in here, just floating around, and we're using the Oase Biocompact as sort of a flow device. Not so much as filtration. Obviously there is a mechanical filter in there, but I wouldn't say that it's doing a whole lot in regards to filtration. I'm going to be relying a lot on surface area in this aquarium as far as our biofiltration goes, and we'll get more to that later. But as far as the sweet flag goes, there was a little bit of transplant shock for some time, but the plant is now starting to bounce back, and there is a lot of new growth now. So a lot of the smaller bits in here are all new, so that's pretty cool. And like I said, there was some transplant shock, so today we're going to go through and snip all of these brown bits, and we should have ourselves a really nice patch of grass growing out of the top of this shallow aquarium. So what's happening when you're trimming bad bits of plants? You know, a lot of times people will see plants that are dying and then they get discouraged and they think that cutting it off is just going to make things even worse. But what you're doing is, you know, when a leaf isn't doing well, the plant is going to focus all of its energy into mitigating that and removing all the nutrients from that leaf. So when you just cut it all together, you kind of skip the need for the plant to focus its energy on that. And therefore, in return, you get a healthier, more energy efficient plant. And in this aquarium, we have a lot of brown algae and mulm already because of all the rot and the plant melt that we already had in here with this sweet flag. So generally, you know, you don't want a bunch of plants rotting in your aquarium, but obviously, for the sake of getting things established and going, especially when there's no fish in here, I consider it a net positive. Alright, real quick, I'm actually removing some of the coarse sand up front here, and I'm going to replace this with the finer sand. And then I just have a mixture of sand here and aqua soil. Yeah, for those of you wondering why I have aqua soil in here, this is, like I mentioned earlier, just from a blend of sand and various substrates from previous projects. So that's kind of what's going on, and I actually don't really mind aqua soil when it's in a state like this, because a lot of times it kind of just breaks down rather quickly, and then it kind of just becomes one with the substrate, you know what I mean? Alright, so while we're waiting for this to kind of settle, since I was kind of disturbing things a little bit, let me show you some of the plants I'm going to be putting in here. So we have a variety of plants here, really low demanding plants that I want to use to just kind of liven up the foreground here. Nothing too crazy, but we have Anubias nana, a bunch of Crypt 1TI brown, and then we have Anubias nana golden, Anubias nana petite, Next, I decided to add some Hygrophila angustifolia. Now, hear me out. I know you all are absolutely tired of this plant because I rave about it all the time on this channel. But since this is a shallow aquarium, I think this will actually look really cool because of how it kind of bends at the edge of the water. And not only that, but this plant does grow immersed relatively easy. So I'm wondering if this plant being in a shallow tank will kind of stimulate that cool immersed growth look that we're going for here. And one more thing, looking closer at the driftwood that's sticking out of the water here, as you can see, it does kind of wick a lot of the water out, and this is just screaming for some Taiwan moss, so we're going to go ahead and add that real quick. I'm pretty excited to be doing an aquarium like this. It's been a while since I've done an immersed setup that had Taiwan moss just out and about above the water. Looks pretty cool. And obviously, we can't forget about this branch right here. Alright, here we are. It's the next day. The dust has settled. We have some plants in here, and I think it's looking really nice. It's a very nice, quaint, shallow aquarium. Very simple. Low tech as always. And we have some moss action going on in the riparian zone, and honestly, I think this looks really cool. Alright, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to add some leaf litter in here, and I have the perfect contender for that. As you can see, we have these tiny little leaves in here, and these are tamarind leaves from Sri Lanka. And as you can see, I have them here already prepared, and these are just the perfect leaf for a smaller profile aquarium. They add a lot of detail in the foreground, and I think they look really cute. I mean, as you can see, they just complement the sand nicely, but they're not too overbearing or too distracting. So I'm gonna go ahead and put those in there. So I have a generous handful here. I'm just gonna go ahead and sprinkle them all throughout the front of the aquarium here. And this might be all that we add in here. I might not add all of it. And this stuff breaks down actually really fast. And especially considering that I boiled it for a pretty good amount of time, it will actually create a nice mulm layer for us, which will be good food for the plants. So I'm actually going to sprinkle some in the back where we can't really see it, because it will greatly benefit the sweet flag that we have back here. Well, everyone, it's been about 30 days since we started this project, and things are growing in very nicely. The variegated sweet flag in the back is sending out rhizomes and runners all along the back side of this aquarium, and it's spreading actually really quickly, which is awesome. That's why I waited some time before I planted the other plants, because I wanted to make sure that this was actually doing well and it wasn't just going to completely die off on me. But lo and behold, this plant does really well in slow moving and stagnant water. So it actually makes a great pond plant. If you have a backyard pond, this is also a great plant. So yeah, with all that being said, I'm going to have this episode come to a close. There was a lot in this video, and I'm going to make a second video here shortly where we do even more to the shallow aquarium, and then we're going to put in the fish. So like I said, I want to put some rice fish in here. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to wait a little longer, let the botanicals break down, and let this aquarium stabilize and just establish a little bit more. And yeah, we'll go ahead and put some rice fish in here. So when I do that, I'll definitely let you know, and we will see another video for sure. So I'm Alex, and you're watching the World of Waging channel, and I'll see you all in the next one.